Hello, and welcome to another episode of Candace Ashley Beauty is Pain. This episode, I will be going over facial creams designed to help with anti-aging, that help with blemishes and fine lines and wrinkles, that would help lighten sunspots such as that and lighten the skin. Sounds good, right? We do things like that now, except they contained what the FDA would refer to as the criminal ingredient, mercury. Now, before I get started with that, I'm actually going to be using some cold cream tonight because I haven't ever really done that. I have heard a lot about cold cream because they're really rich history, like women who look really nice. And actually Pond's is one of the most well-known, and it was created over 150 years ago in about 1846. And I will say that when I did all of my research, I couldn't find anything that would suggest that it ever contained mercury, but some did. And then they were allowed to be on the market for a very long time. And that is what I'm going to tell you about today. One of those things was this. I'm going to butcher this. Gerard's Oriental Cream. It came in 3 colors: white, flesh, and Rachel. Now, the interesting thing is, I was not able to find a sample of whatever color Rachel might be, or whatever white or flesh color was. So before the FDA, as I've mentioned to you a few times, people were using things that were not very safe, whatever. Gerard's Oriental Cream was around for decades, even though it did have a very bad reputation of containing mercury and causing women to go through mercury poisoning. It was able to go on for a long time. And one of the reasons for that was because the mercury in it didn't always respond to everybody's skin the same way. So while some people maybe showed no signs, some people would show signs, but they wouldn't necessarily present immediately after use. So women who had used it for like a year and a half or for whatever might not have noticed the side effects right away. And so it was really hard for consumers at the time in the early 1920s. I need to find out the exact time, because if Pond's was in 1846, Gerard's would have been around that same time. And it was a mercury, it was called calomel that was in it. Anyway, people were getting sick. And what would happen is mercury poisoning, what that does is it creates rings around your neck that are dark and around your eyes, making your skin look dirty. Also, it can turn your gums like a bluish black. It can cause your teeth to fall out, and it can kill you. And it's extremely painful. Mercury poisoning is extremely painful. But the women who were using this Oriental cream didn't really realize that it was the cream causing it. It was advertised as a magic beautifier, and it was on the market for over 59 years. Totally scary. It was actually supported by some doctors. There was a doctor that even claimed that it was the least harmful of all the skin preparations. And even on, oh my gosh, look at this. Even on the advertisement, they claim to taste test it. I would have hated to have that job, right? That would have sucked. Eventually, people were able to figure that out. But it wasn't the only one on the market that contained mercury. In fact, there was another beautifier skin preparation on the market that was meant to get rid of freckles and tans, kind of like, it was a bleacher. It bleached your skin. That's what it did. And it did contain mercury. And in the book American Chamber of Horrors, Ruth DeLam talks about a woman who was Romanian who had no children and whose husband kind of always thought her skin looked dirty. She started using Orthene to help her skin, to get rid of whatever. And she started to get these really dark rings around her neck, and her face just kept looking dirtier and dirtier. And so much so to where like people were noticing it and they were bringing it up, her neighbors and everybody. So she walked into her doctor's office because she didn't know what was causing it. And he took one look at her and was like, ugh, mercury poisoning. I can see it. But just to be sure, they went ahead and did a test. And they took a biopsy of a mole on her, and then they tested the surrounding area, and they found mercury so deeply embedded in her skin, it was impossible to get it all out. They didn't actually say whether or not she died, but I would imagine if she lived, it was very painful. But lucky for us, most cold creams anymore, at least the ones manufactured here in the United States, do not contain mercury. In fact, you're supposed to be able to look for certain ingredients, and if you see them in any of your creams or anything like that, you need to immediately stop using them. Did you know that Pond's was actually the first cold cream that did not have to be refrigerated? Pretty wild. So not only were old cold creams like containing mercury and gonna poison you, you also had to refrigerate them. Like all this effort, and it was futile for naught. Anyway, that is that. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, let me know below.